Renting itself isn't irresponsible, but it does make it harder to build wealth. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why. Here's the first thing you need to understand about rent. Renting itself isn't the problem. The problem is that rent is almost entirely a consumption expense. You pay it, the money leaves your account, and that's it. Nothing stays on your balance sheet. Owning a home works differently. When you make a mortgage payment, part of it goes towards interest, yes, just like rent, but part of it also goes towards principal. That principal, that's the money you keep. So every single month, ownership quietly turns a housing expense into forced saving. And that difference compounds over time. Now, a lot of people will say, yeah, but in my area, renting is cheaper than owning. But here's the part that nobody talks about. Even if in your area, it's cheaper to rent than it is to own a home, to actually benefit off of that difference, you would have to take the extra money that you save from renting and invest it into the S&P 500 or into something every single month to actually benefit off of that difference. Whereas with owning a home, it forces you to save automatically. You don't have to be disciplined. You don't have to remember to save or invest. You don't have to try and fight lifestyle inflation. The housing system forces saving for you into your mortgage payment. And in personal finance, forced systems almost always outperform optional ones. Now let's talk about leverage, because this is where housing really separates itself. A home is one of the only assets regular people are allowed to buy with massive long-term leverage. If you want to buy stocks, you have to pay cash. If you want to buy a business, you need serious capital. But if you want to buy a home, you can put down 5%, 10%, maybe 20%, and you control 100% of the home. That's huge. If you buy a $500K house with $50K down, you're not getting exposure to a $50K asset, you're getting exposure to a $500K asset. So if home prices rise just 3% that year, that's $15,000 in gains on your $50K investment. That's a 30% return, and you don't have to do anything special, you just live there. Renters don't get that leverage. They're paying the same monthly cost, but they get zero upside. And here's where it gets even better. When inflation comes around and it's raising the price of everything over time, like food, gas, coffee, even rent, but if you own a home with a fixed rate mortgage, your payment doesn't rise with inflation. It stays the same forever. So every year inflation exists, your debt actually starts to get cheaper in real terms while rent keeps getting reset upwards. And this is why owning a home feels like an inflation hedge. And renters, they feel the opposite. Their largest expense can rise every single year, which quietly squeezes their ability to save. And your savings rate is everything when it comes to building wealth. Let's imagine two people, same age, same income, same city, same lifestyle. One rents, one buys. The renter pays $2,000 a month. The homeowner's mortgage, also $2,000 a month. Year one, they look identical. But over time, things start to diverge. The renter's rent increases a little every year, maybe 3%. The homeowner's payment, it stays the same. After 5 years, the renter is paying $2,300, $2,400, or maybe $2,500 a month. The owner is still paying $2,000. That difference doesn't feel dramatic in the moment, but it adds up. And at the same time, the homeowner is quietly paying down principal. Not aggressively, not intentionally, just by living in the house. So 10 years later, the homeowner has $80,000, maybe even $100,000 in equity, whereas the renter that's been paying housing costs the entire time, they have nothing. Not because they did anything wrong or because they were irresponsible, but because the system rewards homeownership. Now here's where people usually push back. They'll talk about, but what if the renter invests the difference? And that's a fair question. In theory, a disciplined renter who invests consistently can absolutely build massive amounts of wealth. But in practice, that's a lot harder than it sounds because life happens. Rent goes up, unexpected expenses hit, your income fluctuates, and unlike a mortgage, investing is optional. You don't have to do it. So when money goes tight, investing is usually the first thing to stop. That's why in the real world, most renters don't end up investing the difference perfectly for decades. They can't. But homeowners don't have that choice. When you have a mortgage, the saving happens whether you think about it or not. And there's also the stability factor. Owning a home gives you a predictable housing cost for 15, 20, 30 years. Renting doesn't. And predictability matters for long-term planning. It's easier to invest consistently when your biggest expense doesn't reprice every single year. And it's easier to take calculated risks when your housing cost is locked in. And that's the thing about renting. It introduces uncertainty that homeownership removes. Now zoom out and look at this across millions of households. For most middle-class families, home equity becomes their largest asset. It's bigger than their savings account, it's bigger than their retirement account, and it's not because homes are magical, it's because they combine leverage, forced saving, inflation protection, and long holding periods all at once. Renters are missing that entire engine. And here's what most people don't realize. When interest rates rise, homeowners with low fixed rate mortgages tend not to sell. They stay put, and that actually reduces the supply. And reduced supply helps support home values even when demand weakens. So homeownership, it doesn't just build wealth on the way up, it's often protected on the way down. Renters don't benefit from that dynamic. They're exposed to rising rents without any of the upside. And this is why, when you look at household wealth data, homeowners have dramatically higher net worth than renters. Not because every homeowner is wealthy, and it's not because renters are doing something wrong. It's because homeownership quietly compounds over time in ways that renting never will. Now, this is important. Renting can still be the right choice. If you move often, if renting is far cheaper than owning, if you're genuinely disciplined and you invest aggressively, or if you value flexibility, buying in that situation can absolutely be the wrong move. But on average, over long periods of time, renting makes wealth building harder because it requires perfect discipline to replicate what home ownership does automatically. That's the difference. Renting isn't a failure, it's just a harder path. Whereas owning builds wealth quietly in the background. So is renting bad? No, but it's like you're trying to run a race with boots on. You can win, but you're working twice as hard.